Howdy, welcome to Moltar Aviation. So do you want to learn how to fly but you can't afford it? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can pay for flight training so you can actually become a pilot. All right, so howdy, I'm Dr. Andy Moltar. I'm a flight instructor, a CFI IIMEI. I used to be a corporate pilot, and now I'm a professor of aviation. All right, so I understand. It's hard being able to come up with the money to pay for flight training if your parents aren't rich, um, you're in a dead end job that you're just not making that much, but you've always had the goal of becoming a pilot and possibly a professional pilot in which you do make a lot of money. So, the first thing that comes to mind is loans. Well, first off, I want to try to just encourage you not to take out loans to become a pilot. And first off, there really aren't that many loan options out there. If there are, they have extremely high interest rates that'll keep you buried in debt forever. So, I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey, who is very big against loans, and I understand the argument that you'll take out the loan so that you can become a pilot, and then of course you're gonna make a ton of money as a pilot, and then you just pay off those loans. That if everything works 100% to plan, that could work, but there are a lot of pilots that they don't make very much starting out, and right now the market is not the greatest for getting a job. It's not impossible to get a job by any means. You can certainly get a job, but it's going to take a while before you start making that good money. And as you start getting those new jobs, you start getting lifestyle creep where you start making a little bit of money, you buy a new car, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids, and those loans will just loom over you for years to come. All right, then another argument against getting loans is, let's say you take out your loans and you start your flight training and you get sick or something and you lose your medical certificate and you can't work as a pilot. Well, it's not like you go from making $200,000 a year to just some other random $200,000 a year job just because, hey, I was a pilot. That doesn't mean anybody else wants to hire you for $200,000 a year. So you could find yourself in a situation where you put all this money in with a loan, and then you lose your medical certificate, and then now you just don't have an option, or you don't have a good job that pays as much as you were as a professional pilot, and now you can't pay back your loan. Then you're really going to be screwed. Well, another reason why you don't want to do that is because when you take out these loans, they give you the full amount of the loans, and the flight the flight training industry it has a very high dropout rate. I guess it just depends on what book you're reading, like 70-80% of a dropout rate in flight school. And so, you might think like, well, that's not going to be me. As a professor, I've had a ton of students come through the program like, oh yeah, I'm going to study so hard. And when it comes down to it, they don't. And I'm not saying that you won't, but, you know, 70-80% of people drop out of flight training. Uh, I want you to become a pilot, but I just know not everybody's going to become a pilot. I believe everybody can become a pilot, but being willing to actually put in the hard work, not everybody's going to do it. And if you take out a whole bunch of loans and you put in, you spend a lot of that money in your flight training and then you don't finish, well, now you got a lot of loans that you took out to do flight training that you didn't finish and you don't qualify to become a professional pilot. Now you're not going to make the money you need to pay back those loans. So that's another reason why. So you understand my argument. Don't take out loans. It's just not a good idea. So then, what are some ways you could pay for flight training? Well, I think the best way would be to join the military. The military, after you do a few years of service as an enlisted person, you qualify for the GI Bill, and it is just such an amazing program. They not only pay for to use the GI Bill to its full extent, you have to go to a university that will accept the GI Bill for all the pilot certificates. I know a lot of them don't, but there are still some universities in the country that offer The full cost for private instrument, commercial, multi-engine, CFI. And so you just have to find those. But the GI Bill not only covers the tuition of your classes, the flight fees, but then they also give you like a monthly stipend that you can use to live on. So that is a great option. Now, I know not everybody qualifies to join the military. Maybe you're at a point in your life you're too old to join the military. Okay, I understand that. So I want to tell you about this next way to pay for your flight training. So one way you could afford to pay for your flight training is to actually learn a skilled trade in another profession. And so I know it's kind of going backwards, but here's the idea. You make a lot of money in some job that, will pay you a lot of money, and then you save up that money to then pay for your flight training. So I'll give you some examples of some students that I've had. So one student was a plumber. Plumbers, they make a ton of money. And I don't want you, thumbing your noses down at plumbing. Um, every single plumber I've ever met, they drive like an S-Class Mercedes. So, I mean, that is a great option to work, for a while, save up a lot of money, and then you can go, you know, become a pilot. You go work in the oil fields in Texas or out in the Gulf of Mexico. It's hard work. You gotta be physically fit for it. Um, so that's just but you make a ton of money. Okay, another job I had, there was a girl in my class. She was a traveling nurse, and so when she told me that, I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty good money, I bet." And she's like, "Oh yeah, paying for all my flight training." So that's so getting a skilled job, and not all those skilled jobs require a college degree. So that's just an option. And then plus, if you have experience in those fields, one thing that could happen is if you ever get laid off just because that's how the airline industry or the aviation industry is. If you ever get laid off, well, then you can go back to working that for a little while until the aviation industry picks back up and you get another job. All right, another opportunity to be able to pay for flight school is to start your own business. Um, you know, my master's degree and my doctorate, they're both, MBA, DBA, Doctor of Business Administration and Finance. Um, there's really no secret to business. I thought when I was going for my MBA, for my DBA, I was going to be like, oh, I'm going to find out the secret to business. But there isn't one. All it is you create enough value that somebody else is willing to give you money for the value that you create. And so I'll give you an example. One of my students, he started a landscaping company. And so that's how he's paying for his flight training is, he mows lawns and then he, pays for his flight training. Another set of students I had, they had a construction company, and I think they did a lot of like demolition, just like tearing down small buildings and such. But yeah, they would do that on the weekends, and then during the week they do their flight training. All right, then another profession you can do is become a police officer. So there's been so many police officers that I've met that quit the force and then became pilots. They get quite a bit of good time off. They make relatively good money, and so in their time off, they just learn to fly, and then when they build up enough hours, they go and fly professionally. All right, then another recommendation I have is if you're young, one option you might have is to go work for a flight school. There's so many people that I've met that they will work at a flight school and they don't get paid, but they get, their compensation is they get free flight time. And so, you're sweeping the floors, cleaning the bathrooms, whatever the flight school needs, and then every now and then you get an hour here, an hour there, and then you build up your flight time. I met quite a few people that's how they became pilots. All right, another way, become a truck driver. Now, I do not have my CDL, my commercial driver's license, but that is an option. Um, you know, I would definitely recommend like on over the road driving. That's where you're gone from home for a long time. But you have limits on how many hours you can drive in a day. I think that's like 8 hours in a day. And so what are you going to do with the rest of your day? Could you study? I think so. And then, when you're home, you go fly a few hours with a flight instructor, and then you go back out on the road, make more money, and then you keep on studying, and then you come back, fly a little bit more, and then, hey, eventually you're a commercial pilot. All right. Well, there's lots of ways to make money. I really don't recommend you take out loans. I've just seen it happen so many times that people don't finish their flight training, or they're in the middle of their flight training and then they lose their medical certificate. So if you get loans to help you with your flight training, I mean, you are just setting yourself up for an abysmal situation. So, all right, well, please subscribe, get notified the next time I come out with a video. And if you have any questions or great examples of how you afford your flight training, I'd love to hear about it. Please leave that in the comment section. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.